Hopefully everybody had a great Mother's Day weekend. I get this question quite often, literally several times a week. We're going to be going over listing hygiene and how to keep your listing fresh online, especially focused on, the third-party search portals, your Zillows, your Realtor.coms, etc. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. So I spent some time researching this and uh, got this information to share. So listing hygiene, so protecting your listings online reputation. Um, this is a good thing to really look at, not just throw it in the MLS, but you have to also go and look at the third-party search portals to see how it looks there, because that is where most of the buyers are starting. They all have their favorite app that they're using. And so we want to make sure that the listing is displaying well on those because they do use AI and different things like that to manipulate the listing a little bit on how it's going to be displaying to their customer base. So, um, what we're going to start off with first is how to opt out of incorrect automated valuations like the Zestimate, prevent consumers from linking your listings to negative third-party content, and maintain control of how your listings are perceived across the web. So, as a listing agent, you want to control the narrative of your listing. So these are some ways that you can maintain that control of, how it's being displayed out there. So the automated estimate of property value, which is the AVM, is a specific data field in the MLS that controls how your listing is displayed on the third-party sites, your Zillows, your Redfins, your Realtor.coms. So should your seller opt out of these? The decision to opt out is it's not a one size fits all, but for many of the top producing agents who are listing focused, they generally have their clients opt out of this because of how it displays. Now, there are times where it's good for it to display, but I could say generally, at least right now in this market, from what I've seen, we usually want to turn this off. So the logic for opting out is preventing the anchor effect. So, in negotiation psychology, anchoring is the tendency for a person to rely too heavily on the first piece of information offered. So, if you list a home for 550, but Zillow displays the estimate at 515 on the same page, the buyer is immediately anchored to the lower number. This makes your list price feel expensive or overpriced before they even step inside the house. So they might just go ahead and write this off and say, well, this home's 15,000 overpriced. Why do I want to get into something that's potentially upside down, right? Is, some psychology there. Accuracy gaps for renovated or unique homes, AVMs are math. They're not magic. They rely on public records and nearby comps. They cannot see the $75,000 kitchen remodel, the high-end quartz countertops, or the fact that the house across the street, which is a comp, had mold issues and lowered their price. If your property is superior in condition or features, the AVM will almost always be lower than the true market value. And we want to maintain the narrative of why we're asking this certain price for this home, right? So maintaining control of the narrative. So when you opt out, the portal generally replaces the estimate with a contact agent for details or simply removes the valuation bar entirely. This forces a buyer and the agent to look at the comparable sales you have provided or to call you for justification of the price rather than letting an algorithm do the talking. So the logic for opting in, and again, this is a good tactic sometimes, just depending on how your listing is displaying. If the estimate is significantly higher than your list price, such as you are intentionally pricing low to drive a multiple offer situation, keeping the AVM visible can serve as social proof that the house is a steal. Consumer transparency in a very cookie cutter neighborhood, like large subdivisions where the house, where every house is, comparable or the same or nearly identical, or even a condo community. AVMs are remarkably accurate, actually. In these cases, opting in shows confidence in your pricing strategy. So, how would you handle the conversation with the sellers? Because the seller may say, "Hey, how come there's no Zestimate on my property?" or something similar, thinking that you as the agent did something, to produce this incomplete listing of the house when in fact you're protecting um, the listing and doing, actually a superior job at making sure you're controlling the narrative. So what would you say? Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, Zillow, Redfin use algorithms that haven't walked through your front door. They don't know about your new hardwood floors or the meticulous way you've maintained this home. By opting out of the automated estimate, we ensure that the buyers focus on our professional photos and the actual market data rather than computer-generated guess that would undervalue your home and hurt our negotiating power. I'm going to go ahead and pause right there real quick because it looks like a couple came in. No. So that's going on. Gary's answering some questions there. So let's go ahead and we'll see how this looks here. So I pulled up some of our listings and we can kind of see what they're looking like here. So we have one on Chestnut. So on our website here, this is how it's displaying, $16.99. And if we go back, which I think this kicks me all the way back up again, it does. So we'll get through some of these links, then I'll zoom back in. We look at this estimate on this one, you can see that there is a Zestimate on this one at 1686 900. The list price is 1699. So this one really isn't displaying that well, right? Because his estimate is saying this home is not worth essentially 1.7 million. It's worth 16,886 900. Now, I'm not discrediting, the accuracy of estimates. We all have our opinions on it. That's not the point of this. The point is the perception that you're putting out there with the public. So if that were my listing, I would probably opt out of that AVM. If we're looking at Mountain View here, the AVM is displayed. I'm just going to go straight over to the Zillow, and you can see we have this listed at 1.4. The estimate says 1.361. So essentially, the perception of the public is this home is, $40,000 overpriced currently. And they've already had a 100K price reduction. So I would probably remove the AVM on that property as well. Um, Bass, there is a AVM displayed here. And again, and this is a nice home. This is a really nice home over in Canyon Lake. 1.45 is what they're asking for it. The estimate coming in at 1,407. Now, more likely or not in this one, it's had a ton of upgrades. It could be sitting on the lake. It's this estimate probably is completely inaccurate based on what is inside this home. However, again, the perception is that this home is, $45,000 overpriced, when in fact it's probably not at all. And let's see, I think we have one more here, Holly. So this one's over in Trona. This is, an entry-level home. We got it listed at 129,999, basically 1.3, sorry, 130K. It's showing, 127,400 on the Zestimate. Okay, so we're talking what, 2,500 bucks here, but that could be a big deal, especially in this price range, and especially for an entry-level buyer who really, is probably using up a lot of their savings to get into an FHA loan, or, paying the closing costs if they're doing 100% financing or something like that, and thinking that they're getting into a house where they're already upside down, potentially 2,500 bucks, when, they're already probably really tight on closing costs and things like that. And they're watching, their payment from their pre-approval rate. And they're probably checking the payment on every single house because, in their head, I know my first home that I bought, I said, I don't want to go over, $850 in monthly payment. And so it was fluctuating, just by a couple $1,000s because that was the hard number I had in my head. And, if you think back to when you bought your first home, did you do the same thing? So in my opinion, I would definitely remove the Zestimate on this one, even though it's kind of close. It's only $2,500 when we're talking about this price point and who the buyer potentially is, the buyer pool for this house. It's not really a good look to be showing overpriced. Do you want to be showing some sort of deal or, basically just not even having this estimate there because the 129.9 price sounds like a great price. Right, let me check chat. A few more things came in. So, how do you remove the AVM on Zillow? Do you think that appraisers are influenced by AVMs? I think some of them might be the lazy ones. How do we remove the AVM? I'm going to show you that actually. So let me go ahead and make this bigger again. All right, so we went through the links so you can see what we're talking about here. How can we opt out of the automated values? So the first step is to obviously explain to the seller why you may want to opt out of the automated estimate or property value feature on their listing. Secondly, when prepping the listing agreement, so the RLA bundle, you're going to use the MLSA form. This is the document behind the residential listing agreement. It's part of the bundle. You don't need to add anything else. It's already there. And you're going to select the internet opt-out features. This is found um, here on page 2. So it says features opt-out. And looks like my arrow got moved here. It's supposed to be pointing to the automated estimate of value. So you would be looking at 1B, 2B, automated estimate of value. You're going to check that box, and that is giving you the authority as a listing agent to opt this seller out of the automated values. Little side note here, because this question comes up quite a bit, so I thought I'd just throw it in real quick. If you're going to go live in MLS or marketing the property by definition of clear cooperation, which we covered a couple weeks ago, on a date later than 24 hours of the listing contract date, you're going to select 3A2 on the MLSA to find that listing date. So you take the listing today, everything is signed, but seller says, I don't want this thing on till Friday. Technically, by contract, you need to have this into the MLS within 24 hours, but it's not going to be ready, right? So you're going to select this right here on 3A. This is on the third page. And it says, uh, sorry, not 3A. We're going to be, I went up a little too much. We're at 2D2, begin marketing of the property to the public under full exposure on this date. So check that box, put in the date. So you put in this Friday, okay? So little side note there. So now you have that, you're ready to put in MLS. When inputting into your MLS, you want to look for the opt-out fields. Select the field for Internet Automated Valuation Display or similar. It varies by MLS. What we're looking at here is a screenshot from CRMLS. So you'll have to find this, but there's going to be a similar section here of Internet opt-outs, and here it is right here. Everything's defaulted to yes, most likely. So you want to go ahead and check this to no. So internet automated value display, you're going to toggle this to no, and then the AVM is not going to show up on any of the sites. So after you do that, this will disable this feature on all websites that have this feature, and your listing will display as follows. And if we look at this one over on Vista Way, we're at 1950, and you can see there is no Zestimate here. So they opted out of the AVM here, and I'm gonna guess, just because of that particular area, there's a lot of like older homes and remodels and additions, and some have ocean views and all this stuff, right? So I mean, these estimates are probably completely off. So I would definitely in that area want to get rid of this estimate here. So that's what would happen and how you do it. Let me go ahead and increase this again. So we won't shouldn't need to do that anymore. Um, okay, so now we're here. Look at the chat real quick. So what does internet consumer comments? So the negative comments, refer to, and should I opt the seller out of this? Now, this is something that is much less common, but you just never know, right? So this would be 1B to A, comments and reviews. So if you don't want people to be able to link to um, your listing or, such as someone putting it into some sort of group or Reddit thread or something like that and making comments about it, then you would check this. So again, this is kind of uncommon, but if we're talking about stigmatized properties or something like that, you'll definitely want to do this. Um, so yes, consumers have the ability to post property links to various websites and disparage a listing. If a property is receiving slow traffic or negative feedback, it's critical to investigate its footprint on forums and social media. Some examples that were pulled up, you see a lot of Reddit stuff here: price history, inconsistency, critique, and this could even be other agents posting stuff. Um, so they frequently point out missing sales history on Zillow while linking to both Zillow and Redfin listings to highlight data issues. This one was a fixer-upper flip critique, saying that, it was poorly flipped and things like that, and then they provided a link to it. Zillow Gone Wild, there's some pretty good stuff on that one, as far as like just crazy stuff in homes. If you have one of those homes that fortunately or unfortunately gets picked up by well, it's a Facebook page, um, you might want to turn this off. So these posts commonly include a link to the specific listing, making them great examples of critical comments tied directly to actual listings, and they can drag down a property's perception. So, all right, let's move on to revitalizing stagnant listings in a slow market. So, we're talking about essential online listing hygiene, and what we just went through was probably some of the biggest stuff you can do to make sure that you're doing your best as a listing agent to control the narrative, the marketing narrative of the property. So before getting, you know, before throwing a bunch of money at it, right? Advanced marketing tactics, staging, pumping out lots of money for ads and things like that. Make sure that the home you've done everything you can with the home before you move on to the expensive stuff. So claim and monitor the property across platforms. So claim the property on Zillow, Realtor.com, Redfin, if possible. Some allow for agents or sellers. This gives you more control over the info displayed and lets you fix errors fast. Set up Google alerts, create alerts for the property address so you're notified if there's any mentions, bad reviews, news stories, things like that. This is pretty uncommon, but if you have one of those listings that you think is going to get potential negative attention, then you'll probably want to do that so you can address it. Report duplicate or inactive listings. Sometimes you're picking up a listing as a for sale by owner, and now you're beginning to market this property. You have an agreement with them. You don't know where these people posted this thing. They could have posted it on all kinds of sites. So need to check for duplicate listings out there because they're probably not going to be accurate. The photos aren't going to be the same, descriptions, things like that. Um, and then write an SEO optimized, clear listing description. Um, this part is kind of interesting because I know a lot of people, a lot of agents are using like a chat GPT or something like that to develop the the remarks, the marketing remarks, which is great because they do sound interesting a lot of times, but we could be actually doing the property a little bit of a disservice because of how the third party portals, find the matches to the filters, right? So, um, use specific neighborhood names, school districts, features buyers actively type into search bars like main floor, primary suite, fenced backyard, RV parking. Avoid using adjectives like charming and cozy unless you back them up with hard details. We'll go into this just a little bit more down here as well. Advanced tactics without price reductions. Um, this one, if you've done any research, it does help. And what we're trying to do here is manipulate the algorithm of the third-party search portals to keep our listing fresh because what they do is they will, they're going to send out an email to all the people that have these saved searches for something that your property might match. And when you list it, it's gonna send them a notification that something that matched their criteria just hit the market, right? And so now that's why you get so many eyes in the beginning when you first list your property. Um, and then as the weeks go on, they start moving on to other properties as far as the third party search portals of what they want to be promoting. So we want to be able to stay relevant in those saved searches, and the photo shuffle is one of the ways that you can do that. So swap the primary photo. So change the primary thumbnail image on the MLS. If you used an exterior front photo, switch it to, a stunning updated kitchen, backyard oasis, or twilight exterior shot. Just switch it to something else, one of the better pictures. I'm sure, whenever you get your photos back from your photographer, you're like, wow, these six right here are awesome. These are the best photos. These are the ones that are going to sell the house. You can rotate those out. The first picture doesn't always have to be the front of the house. So this makes the listing look entirely new to a buyer scrolling through quickly. Uh, Reorder the gallery, so move the best interior shots to the front. So when you're in MLS, you can drag and drop all your photos into, the order that you want them to be viewed, not only in MLS, but on any third-party site. So buyers typically click away after 5 to 7 photos if they aren't hooked. So front load the photos, put the good stuff in the front. Um, Add seasonal updates. So if you listed in winter and now it's spring, maybe you listed last year, they took it off the market for a little bit, and now they're thinking about putting it back on the market, and you're like, hey, that's great. We already got photos. Well, we don't want to see bare trees and snow in the background in the mountains and things like that, unless that's still like that. But nothing screams stale listing more than old photos like that. So you may need to invest on getting updated photos. They're probably going to look better now anyways, because everything will be a little more green. So triggering the portal algorithms. So the third-party sites, they don't simply display listings in chronological order. So they operate like a complex search engine that prioritizes listings based on completeness, media quality, and user engagement. So here's how the top portals work and how you can manipulate their algorithms to keep your listing at the top of the feed. Uh, Step back just a little bit. When I was more heavily in production and I was primarily doing listings, that was part of my listing pitch. And we didn't have all this digital stuff. We didn't have tablets and stuff when I was really, like in my early years of being a salesperson. So I literally had a binder, right, that I would take for my listing presentation. But I had copies of, some of my best listings in there, and how they displayed on the internet. That was part of my listing pitch was, look, I put a complete listing in. I tick off every single thing in MLS that this home has because people were still looking online, and you wanted to make sure that all the information was there. So that even to this day is still really important. If you're just kind of doing the minimum um, with your listing input, as far as like I'm only going to do, the mandatory yellow fields inside the MLS, you could be potentially doing your listing a disservice if you're just trying to get this thing inputted and move on with your day. Take a little extra time, make sure that you're ticking off every little box of every little thing that this house has, because third-party sites like to see that. They like to see listing completeness. So Zillow search and ranking algorithm. This was all done through research. So, I'm sure this is, somewhat accurate at least. So the mobile fold test. So over 76% of buyers view listings on their mobile devices on Zillow, Redfin mobile apps, but only see the first two lines, which is about 150 to 200 characters of your marketing remarks. So before they're forced to tap read more, your most valuable hard-hitting specification or concession needs to be in those first 150 characters to prevent buyers from scrolling past. And it's great if you have a big old long write-up. I'm guilty of it too. I go about 3 lines in and I'm like, okay, that's it. I scroll through a few pictures and I move on. So put all the pertinent, the sales points, the stuff that's gonna get this home to sell, its best features, put those in the first few paragraphs there. Sorry, first few sentences, to make sure that the buyers are seeing it. If you talk about the whole thing and they're like, oh yeah, by the way, the solar is paid off and we're offering 10K in buyer closing cost credit, and that's, the second paragraph down, you're probably not, the consumer's not even gonna get that far down probably. So put that front and center. Again, completeness is king. Zillow search algorithm indexes every single data field provided in the MLS. Uh, the algorithm favors listings that have comprehensive information and regular updates. So again, that's talking about the photos and rotating the photos around. The Zillow ecosystem boost. Zillow historically rewards listings that utilize professional media, especially those using its own tools like Zillow 3D, home app tours. In fact, listings featuring interactive floor plan get 72% more shares and are saved 79% more frequently on Zillow than those without one. I've used that feature. I don't know. I guess it's fine, but it did mess up the highlight section, which we're going to cover here pretty soon. And so that I did not like for the particular home that I was listing at that time. Realtor.com and keyword SEO. So the hidden amenities, Realtor.com pulls heavily from the specific amenity and property feature checkboxes that many agents leave blank. So leaving the fields like hardwood floors or central AC blank essentially removes you from those specific buyer filter searches. Hyperlocal natural language. Nearly half of all buyers start their search online using highly specific phrases like three-bedroom home near downtown Clovis or condo with pool in Menifee. So Realtor.com search algorithm heavily values these local SEO keywords. So write up your descriptions the exact way buyers actually search. And I've said that for so many years about SEO. How do you do it on your website? How do you do it, in your LinkedIn bio and all these other things? And I always ask myself, what would I search to find this? What would I type into the computer or my phone? So that's always a good test of, what would you do in order to find this thing? Uh, Landmarks and context, including neighborhood context, such as well-known landmarks, specific school zones, directly improves your listing discoverability for long tail searches in the search engines. Redfin, engagement-based logic. So Redfin does not simply push the newest listings to the top of its site. The platform uses an internal ranking system that factors in user engagement signals such as click-through rates, time spent on the page, and number of saves. The visual penalty, if your property photos are dim, grainy, poorly framed, the algorithm may actually demote your listing even if the property is brand new. Redfin heavily features listings that include Matterport 3D walkthroughs or video tours. The price comp penalty. Redfin's AI compares your listing price to the Redfin estimate and nearby comparables. If the property is priced significantly higher than similar homes nearby, the system can flag the listing as uncompetitive and bury it in the search results. Probably another reason to go ahead and turn off that AVM. How to trigger freshness alerts across all portals. So, after a couple weeks, your listing's getting a little stale. I mean, you should be rotating around the pictures and changing up the marketing remarks anyways, but maybe you haven't. A couple weeks in, you see, everything's dropping off, the online views are dropping off, and showings are dropping off. Then you probably want to make some tweaks. So make a habit of tweaking the public remarks details on the MLS regularly, even minor changes such as price adjustments or adding new photos. Signal to the algorithms that the property is being actively updated. If you do not update your listings regularly, you are essentially telling the platforms that your property is not worth promoting. So, something to think about there is, you get the photo package, maybe save a few, because usually there's multiple angles of a room and things like that. Maybe don't put them all in, save a few and rotate them out, every few days so that, the third party search portals think that this thing is being updated regularly and we need to continue displaying it, promoting it. Data sync checks. So most real estate APIs update data in batches rather than in real time, meaning your changes can take anywhere from 15 minutes to several hours to appear across all platforms. When you update the MLS to trigger a new alert, always check the portals later that day to ensure your refreshed details synced correctly and didn't create data inconsistencies. Something that I don't see happen very often, but I did notice when the market slowed down a few years back, the reverse prospecting started again. So I get these notifications every now and then of agents using that reverse prospecting function in MLS. So there is a reverse prospecting tool to find agents who have set up auto emails for buyers matching your listings criteria. So basically what it does then is you can send a message to those agents, say, hey, we just had a price improvement over here or something else, and kind of get it in front of those agents that have a buyer with a safe search matching your home search's criteria. So that's the whole use of the reverse prospecting. Highlight alternative financing in the description. So in a slow market driven by high rates, affordability is the actual issue and not always the asking price. So advertising concessions front and center, like I said, the first couple lines there in the marketing remarks. If the seller is willing to put, seller offering X toward 2-1 rate buy down or closing costs, and the very first line of the public remarks. Same thing for assumable mortgages. Those things are popular. So if you have a home that has a, assumable mortgage on it, I would definitely be advertising that. There's some caveats with that as far as timelines and things like that that the seller needs to be on board with. But also, I would, if they're willing to do that, I would definitely put that front and center on the remarks. All right, the highlight tags. If you don't know what these are, they're going to be right above the listing description, your marketing remarks, and there's usually like a tag or maybe a couple tags there highlighting features of the home. But what I have found is that they're not always accurate, and you have to play around with the marketing remarks for it to, get the correct things into the highlight that you want to be highlighting. The example I gave was I had a higher end listing with an ocean view and some other good features. And the highlights simply said fruit trees, and that's not what I wanted to market. So I wanted it to say ocean view in the highlights. Um, Going back to the Zillow 3D um, photo thing. So when you get that, I noticed that that's all that displays in the highlight. It says 3D video tour. And that was not what I wanted to promote either on this particular house because I wanted the ocean view to be front and center, not necessarily the 3D view or the 3D tour from Zillow. So I actually ended up removing the 3D tour that I paid for because I didn't want Zillow to promote this 3D tour. I wanted it to promote the ocean view. So, and then it took a lot of kind of tweaking with the remarks and stuff to be able to get that. So, how do you optimize this? So ensure Zillow highlights displays the features you want most. You must understand Zillow's interface uses dual engine approach, natural language processing for your description and computer vision for your photography. Unlike the facts and features section, which pulls directly from structured MLS checkboxes, the highlights section is an AI generated summary designed to prioritize what it deems standout features relative to other local listings. So standardize your keywords. So they use lemmatization and tokenization to process your description. It groups variations of words into single concept, such as BDRM, BR, and bed are all mapped to bedroom. If you use non-standard jargon, the AI may fail to tag the feature as a highlight. So what's the action? The action is use clean tokens that the algorithm is trained to recognize. So while it sounds better and AI probably wrote it for you, culinary space has been refreshed. Truthfully, what's best is updated kitchen, remodeled kitchen, or renovated kitchen because the computer understands that, right? So the culinary space has been refreshed. It's not picking that up, or potentially it's not picking it up as easily as it would if you just said what it really is without getting too fancy, right? The renovation trigger. So research indicates that keywords like renovation, refurbish, and remodel act as primary indicators for condition-based highlight tags. We talked about the mobile fold before. So you want to prioritize that. Zillow's algorithm and user interface prioritize the first 150 to 200 characters of the description. While the AI scans the entire text, features mentioned in the first two lines are given higher weight in the highlights hierarchy because they align with the user engagement, which is the click-through rates. So the action, front load your top 3 desired highlights, new roof, mountain views, and pool in the very first sentence of the MLS public remarks, or at minimum, the first 2 sentences. So this will help you get the highlight tags that you want and also the better engagement on it because you're covering, 1 to 3 things right up front that are the highlights of the property that probably are engaging the consumer more than if you talked about it being, a rare find and, all this charm and things like that without getting to the nitty-gritty of what does this home have. Looks like we had a couple questions. Yes, the document will be available in our back office. Are there any disclaimers to put in the listing or on photos that have been virtually staged? Yeah, you can put that in the private remarks, and you also have to be careful with that too because of the laws that were passed. So you need to have the other ones available, or in the description, you can add a photo description as well. On each one of the photos, you can type in what it is and provide some information on it as well. Optimize photos for computer vision. Zillow uses computer vision models to analyze interior and exterior photos to identify non-standard variables like aesthetic appeal and cohesiveness. The AI can see a modern kitchen even if you don't type it, provided the photo quality allows for feature extraction. So getting good high quality photos is actually more important now than ever, not just because they're visually better, but because now we have the tech at these companies and they're searching our photos now. So ensure your first 5 to 10 photos explicitly showcase the features you want to be highlighted. If you want a great views tag, the view must be clearly visible through a window or from a balcony in a high resolution, well exposed photo. Grainy or dark photos often cause the AI to ignore high value features. Another thing you can do, leverage listing showcase for manual control. So if your team or you uses Zillow's listing showcase, and this is a premium project, you have to pay for it. You can gain significantly more influence. This product utilizes an AI discovery assistant that helps agents generate and refine persuasive copy grounded to the listing specific attributes. So in the showcase dashboard, you can often verify or refine the AI generated highlights, giving you semi-manual override that basic listings don't have. The amenity gap check. One of the most common reasons a highlight fails to appear is the data gap where the description mentions a feature, but the MLS checkbox for that feature was left blank. Zillow's AI cross-references these to ensure factuality and prevent hallucinations. And we're starting to hear about those more with the AI hallucinations. Uh, so audit your MLS input. If you mention central AC in the text but forgot to check the cooling central box in the MLS, Zillow may suppress the tag because the data sources conflict. So it's only going to do what it finds or what it's told. So if you want to trigger specific tags like updated kitchen, description keywords, updated kitchen, remodeled stainless appliances in the MLS, ensure kitchen features are fully checked. So we have all the little boxes of all the little stuff we can check. Just don't check one so that you can move on. Check all that apply. Photo requirement, bright, wide angle shot of the kitchen as photo number 2 or number 3. So this will help you get into the highlights tags that you want. It'll probably help in user engagement as well. Big lot, so that's going to be large lot, acreage, spacious backyard. Fill in the exact lot size field in decimals. So we're doing square footage usually versus the acreage, but you can do, I'm sure it's going to pick up either aerial drone shot of the or wide backyard shot. So make sure that that lot is being featured in the photos pretty prominently. Mountain view, easy enough. Mountain view, panoramic vista. There is a views section in the MLS. If we could check all the little boxes that apply, some of them sound similar to the other ones, but check them off anyways. And then a clear shot of the horizon from inside the home. New roof is looking like new roof. Roof replaced 2025. That's what it's going to recognize. Use a specific year of replacement in text, and then a crisp exterior shot showing the roof texture. We're right at 10. I might save this other part about pricing for next week because this went a little longer than I thought. I apologize about that. So I think I'm gonna, just for sake of time, do the pricing strategies along with something else next week because that's probably about 15 minutes there. So hopefully that helps. Again, I get these questions a lot. I didn't know the answers to all of it, so I spent quite a few hours researching, and this was a lot of information that I came up with Zillow, so I actually learned a little bit today as well. Um, well, actually over the weekend. So yeah, if you have any listings that are kind of sitting, here's some things that you can do to get them refreshed rather than just letting them kind of die on the market, and then hounding your clients for price reductions, which it still may need, but try all the other stuff first, and see if your views remain a little bit more consistent or if you get a bump in traffic just by, refreshing the listing a little bit. So, as always, if you ever have any questions, give me a call. Everybody has my cell phone. And hopefully you have a great week and we will talk to you. We'll see you next week.